A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine. I recently had a conversation with a professor who's a biologist, who's a chemist, he's wonderfully versed in an incredible number of things and explains them so that I understand them too. And on the last broadcast, he said a sentence which I think is very important. He said that if I can't eat it, it shouldn't touch my skin either. Yeah, and that's exactly where we stopped. And now I'd like to warmly welcome him again. Professor Hans Rasch, welcome to us. We'll get into this topic in a moment. If I can't eat it, it doesn't get on my skin. Let's go into cosmetics. What does this conventional large mass cosmetics offer? From cheap to expensive. Are these products that we can eat? I would advise everyone against it, and clearly advise against it. Because the typical ingredients that are processed there would not be very digestible. And all the marketing behind it keeps telling us all the time that there are so many great active ingredients in these cheap and expensive cosmetics. They promise us beauty, they promise us firm skin, removal of beauty spots, God knows what else. Everything natural and organic. Is it right or is it wrong? Or at what price? In many cases, it's a sham. I'm not contradicting that in many of the products advertised as natural. Nature is part of it. Well said. Well, I formulate it consciously. Nature is part of it. Whether this is then what it really should be is a completely different question that we can talk about separately. In many cases, there are few exceptions. A classic cream base is used for reasons of cost. Now, of course, you have to understand why. What is a cream anyway? Basically, we have something like milk. So, milk is water parts with ingredients and fat droplets in it. What happens to the milk now? If you get milk from the farmer, which the normal consumer no longer gets, or only rarely, then when they put it in the refrigerator, at the latest, the next morning, they find that it has a solid part on top, namely the so-called skimming. So, that means, simply explained, the fat droplets are so big, and fat is lighter than water, that they rise to the top and clump into a solid conglomerate, and then swim to the surface. So, if you put salad oil in a salad, the fat eyes float on the top, and that's how you have to imagine it. The fat content in the milk, of course, also contains other ingredients, and this leads to solidification. Otherwise, there'd also be a layer of oil on the water. And that's exactly how you have to imagine creams. Now, let's take a step back. On the packaging of the consumer product milk that we buy, it often says homogenized. What does that mean? The end user usually doesn't know what to do with this statement. Homogenizing the milk is actually not a chemical process, so we don't do anything chemical to the milk. Instead, we use a physical process, a manufacturing process, by using mechanical, let's say fly cutters, and make the fat droplets so small that the density difference that makes them rise to the top and would lead to skimming no longer happens because the friction in the water column in the milk is too great in relation to the force that drifts upwards due to the difference in density. So that fat is lighter than water. So when the droplets are tiny and can no longer separate, then they stay. We have a homogeneous mix. We know it in milk. And creams are the same. A typical cream is water-based and fat-based. So fat and water combined. Normally they part. If I homogenize it accordingly, with mechanical work, it will stop. That's what we know as a cream. But since the whole thing only remains stable for a certain time, the milk is drunk at some point, it has a certain shelf life. In cosmetic products, you want to extend the shelf life for months, years. Chemical stabilizers are basically used and so on. So, if you use natural fats now, milk is a natural fat, we have the problems. The whole problem can be avoided by using chemically clearly defined, for industrial processing and stability optimized, chemically produced synthetic fats, which then segregate very badly afterwards, and thus the stability of the product is guaranteed. This means that we don't have natural fat in it, but rather artificially generated synthetic fats, which the body doesn't actually know. We then smear them on the skin. The skin is, of course, a large organ, and we actually introduced a foreign body into our organism. That's what we do all the time. Usually, in normal cosmetics, that's the basis. All the products are based on a standardized, industrially easy-to-produce portfolio of different ingredients. So there's like a small Lego construction kit where I basically take the individual modules out of the list and say, I want to stabilize, I want to increase the emulsion, I want this, and then I take my kit parts and put them together accordingly. But there are so many things in there that have nothing to do with nature at all. Nature is not even part of it. I've read many times that there are also hormones in there. Let's say whether these are hormones, I would not even say that, but one more thing that is much worse, so-called endocrine disruptors. In other words, compounds that have a hormone-like effect, but so at least a hormone would still be nature identical or natural, but they're then chemical, act like a hormone, but can only be treated by the body as a foreign substance. So much worse, actually. These things are included, then of course appropriate preservatives are included. So for the chemically related compounds in gasoline, we say don't breathe in so intensely at the gas station, but we then smear similar compounds onto the skin as preservatives in the cream in appropriate quantities. So phenoxy compounds that naturally kill bacteria, but are also not very beneficial for our organism. I think the topic is incredibly important because I just believe that marketing has made us so blind. Well, marketing is one side. Of course, there's one thing that you have to understand. To be able to generate affordable cosmetics, so beautification means, in the legal sense, the raw material must not cost anything so that the end product remains affordable. So, by having so many margins, and now I have to give away some secrets, in insider circles the rule applies. The end product costs in relation to what the manufacturer earns with the production, with all the raw materials used, with the packaging, with the labelling and with the dispatch, and profit margin are a factor of 7. This means that if a product costs 7 francs, then it can cost the manufacturer just 1 franc. How many good ingredients do I get for 1 franc? Yeah, I understand the margin, because there's a sales department in between. There are many steps in between, but those are the clear statements. The product must not cost more than X, and then it's calculated backwards, and then in the end, the producer is obliged to produce a product at a price. which is so low that they actually have no more money to buy high-quality raw materials. Now again, everything that we actually put on our skin via these raw materials in these creams, ointments and God knows what there is, we can assume that everything we smear into it also goes into the skin. Yeah, yes and no. Let's use an example, a classic product that's now widely used everywhere, which is hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid makes skin smooth. In professional circles, hyaluronic acid is called humectant. That's the technical term. Translated, water binder. Or, to put it more drastically, the modern curing salt of the cosmetic industry. So, a chemical that binds water in a place in the skin where it actually doesn't belong. But the fact that the water is in there ensures that the skin looks firmer. It tightens, it just inflates and nothing else. Temporarily. Where all the ingredients in modern cosmetics go has deliberately never properly been investigated. So very little is known in dermatology. You only know that someone who is sensitive to it gets serious problems from it. But I read that it was already done. So it's cream, and then you have already been able to detect these harmful substances in the water or the stool. You can, of course, prove a lot of things analytically. Many of the ingredients end up in the body, but cannot be properly metabolized in the body. It burdens the liver and the kidneys. Yeah, not only that, they are transported everywhere in the bloodstream and are actually a burden, to be precise, for the whole organism. So it can also be that a lot of allergies that a person has are also favoured by the wrong cosmetics. A positive trigger cannot be ruled out with certainty, so that means allergies, where they come from in detail, you have to go very far and differentiate very strongly. It certainly does not have a positive effect on it, because it actually triggers the body's own reactions and thus actually worsens a disease process. You know, I think many of our viewers are already looking for cosmetics that really contain nature, and a lot is also promised. The salesperson has also been trained that the 4 largest ingredients are natural products, but ingredients 5 to 20 are just pure chemistry. We're informed by experts who actually don't know more, and we believe it. I think it's a question of faith. We have no legal regulation in this segment, so you can throw around terms, you can pop in nonsense ingredients if you meet the international ingredient lists. And if you look at it, you will see that 2/3 of it, to be precise, can be viewed as highly critical or critical. We can legally slam them into these products in ignorance. Of course, you also have to understand that the relevant industry representatives have made sure that for them, no restrictions have happened for a long time. Like I said, as a result of this, the whole thing should be produced cheaply, in a way that is suitable for industry, and dealing with nature is a hell of a trip for every industrial producer. Because of the shelf life? No, because of the inhomogeneity. One batch to the next behaves completely differently. In other words, what they set out in their machine, in production, last time they can forget again and can start all over again. For industrial producers, having to deal with nature that causes new headaches every time is difficult, and they can never really plan when the stuff is really ready. To do this, they need far too much expertise, which companies have no longer had in their own ranks for decades. and thus of course are dependent on standardized raw products, which then have the appropriate advertising and are labelled as good, uncritical or whatever. Now, you have said in one sentence that you would never smear anything on your skin that you can't eat. And on the other hand, we know that cosmetics need a shelf life. And if there are now these cosmetics that you can eat, to what extent are they made durable? So I'll give you two answers now. Number one, why cosmetics that you can eat? Sounds completely stupid at first glance. Only when you look at the organism, however, we clearly see that the skin is the outer covering tissue. Our digestive tract has only disappeared in the body, but it is also a covering tissue. From a chemical point of view, it is also skin. The biochemistry is very comparable, only that inside it's very moist. We then call it mucous membrane, and the outside is as dry as possible. There are dead layers of callous skin on top, but the biochemistry of the living cells of the skin in the intestine, 12 meters long, is identical to what we have outside. That means everything that lives in the skin has the same biochemistry. Why am I allowed to pop chemical products into a lipstick, which would have criminal consequences in food law? I'm telling you, I've had it up to here, because the assumption is that the lip will not be swallowed. Inside, it's considered toxic, although we know that 95% of the mass of a lipstick then gets ingested by the user throughout the day. But let's leave it aside. From a purely legal point of view, a grease stick or lipstick is considered a cosmetic product. This means that different legal norms apply than for food. With it I can pop in poisonous substances without problems that I should never pop into food. Now, I've just said that the bowel inside is actually the same. It's just folded in there, we don't see it. But that's the same as out here. Why do I pop substances on my skin which have long been limited by legislature, which actually always lags behind the scientific opinion? I shouldn't be able to use them, but I am allowed to apply them in large quantities to the skin. That means we differentiate cosmetics from food. And I say, if I couldn't use it as food, then why am I torturing myself or torturing my body by smearing it over my skin? That explains this postulate of mine that what I cannot eat should not be applied to the skin either. Yeah, now I totally understand. Now, the shelf life. I forgot the shelf life, sorry. That's the other point. Now, of course, we have a classic basic concept. Our previous generations knew when they were doing something fresh. We talk about slow food, we talk about cooking, and then buy instant food. And it's the same with sensible, real nature-based cosmetics. In other words, functional cosmetics that are really made on this basis. Without the appropriate chemical preservatives, it will only have a limited shelf life. But I don't store food indefinitely either. Let's put it this way. This means that the industry is, of course, interested in producing on a large scale, stockpiling, and then selling off. This will only be possible to a limited extent in nature. Then I have to preserve it again, and then I have to add chemicals again, which I don't need. But how long does it last? Usually half a year. Rather longer, and according to my understanding, a natural product does not have to last longer, because then we'd rather make it fresh again and prefer to give it away in smaller portions. Then the consumer as the user will have more of it. The next question I have right now is there a large sales department behind it where the margin is multiplied by 7, or do you go directly to the manufacturer? It's really about not passing the high cost prices in production via these margins or multiplication onto the consumer, but to keep it to an acceptable level through absolutely lean structures from the manufacturers themselves, or at most an extra sales organisation, and to realise the production not on a large technical scale, but on a manufacturing, because only then is it really possible to always be able to react individually to the variability of the raw materials used, and then to be able to provide corresponding products with high quality. And what kind of products are there? Shampoo? There is shampoo, there is shower gel, there is... we discussed the repair product. There is wound healing stories. Then in this context, hair tonic. There's also something we called it After Sun, a cream that's on the one hand not a cream at all. We designed it as a spray, or I designed it as a spray, just to apply it to burns, respectively. Sunburn is also nothing more than a burn. It's easy to apply. This is something that people excellently accept, are happy, and say we finally have something to prevent blistering. This product is used, for example, I never thought in advance, also with the laser removal of unwanted tattoos. Because, of course, burns occur there too. There's a wide range of products which you can also find on the aforementioned website at any time for different areas of application. You haven't said the site yet. That's naturework.eu. All the products are listed there. And the information about it? There's the relevant information. The ingredients are declared. And we only use nature-based ingredients. And one thing that is very important, the fat phase is not a chemical fat, but cold-pressed olive oil. And now comes the limitation. What is industrially produced as cold-pressed olive oil, if we use that, the creams will no longer work. We have a special supplier who only has private contacts, who in Germany only supplies the Käfer company and the KaDeWe in Berlin in the delicatessen department, and the rest of the material goes into production with us. That means we get material from a Greek stone mill, where no industrial beautification, deodorization, or other post-treatment steps are included that turn olive oil into an industrial fat. We keep hearing about scandals. Oil scandals, oil adulteration. That's wonderfully possible when it is processed industrially, because then nobody notices it. I'm quoting a well-known boss who is very recognized in Germany, of a state food control authority, who says the regulations for cold-pressed olive oil are, in a way, that old transformer grease can also be mixed in it, without anyone noticing it analytically. And when you hear these things, of course, if I do not identify something as A goods in incoming goods, it will never be used in a product. And why now olive oil? Olive oil is, from a processing point of view, a horror trip of industrial chemists. Olive oil is closest to human skin. in terms of its fatty acid composition. That means we feed the skin exactly what it has too little of in the event of a burden, what it needs for self-regeneration. So we add exactly what's missing. In the past, it was often done, apply olive oil to the skin. Of course, but the industry couldn't do anything with olive oil because it only causes problems during processing. I'm just doing a very simple example. Our time's over, dear Hans. One more sentence. Yes, please. If you take olive oil, that's an old home remedy, you can remove imprints from any containers immediately, because the olive oil is like solvent for many of today's printing inks. This means that the industry cannot process olive oil at all, because otherwise the label on the packaging will be gone. For that reason alone, it's never used, for example. Tell me one more sentence. Also in the beauty industry, could one achieve very good results with these cosmetics? Of course. It would also make sense, because beauty comes from within. But if I channel things into the body from the outside, which are then counterproductive afterwards, then why should I get a good result? I actually put food into the skin from the outside. So the wrinkles, for example, age spots and so on. Is it all conceivable that the process will be slowed down here then? Yeah, a natural product will of course not achieve a quick result, like pumping up with water binders, but exactly the opposite, namely maintaining the health of the cellular, living structure inside that is then afterwards manifested again on the outside in a corresponding aesthetic form. Thank you, Hans. That was another lecture par excellence. Really great to clarify a few things here, to be able to hear it from the expert, and also knowing that there is a solution. And the context, cosmetics that we can eat definitely do not harm us. They are good for us. And everything that we cannot eat, we have to think seriously if we really want to smear it on our skin. If it's already viewed very critically by the food authorities, and should only be treated from the outside. And still 80-90% gets into the skin. It's a really fun game somehow. But let's leave it at that, Hans. Thank you for explaining to us. Thank you for telling us a solution. Thank you also from my side. It's been really cool, great. And to you too, dear viewers, all the best and see you next time.